Let's begin by centering. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for just a moment. And let's take a deep breath in. And let's engage Mula Bandha, your root chakra, by squeezing the muscle at the base of the pelvic bowl. Let's push our shoulders back to activate the heart. And let's bring our chin back to activate the throat. And with our eyes closed, let's look up at the center of the forehead. And now imagine that you're drawing the breath in through the crown, into your belly, through your nose. And exhale down into the earth. And breathing out from the earth into the belly. Exhaling through the crown. Visualizing the crown chakra fully open and drawing the breath in from the heavens. Seeing the breath go down through the legs, through the soles of the feet, into the earth. And then drawing the breath up from the center of the earth into the belly. And exhaling through the crown. And one more breath, drawing it in from the heavens. Exhaling into the earth. And breathing up from the earth. Exhaling. And so that is the central channel breath with the 4 anchor points engaged. And this breath, when done regularly, it opens, it expands, it delineates our central channel so that we're drawing in the energy that is us into this physical body. But it also allows you and me to be supported by heaven and earth, right, as we establish this connecting point between the two, which is our physical body. So, that being said, what are the energy codes? And the energy codes are a set of principles that are developed by or were developed by Dr. Sue Morter to help individuals embody their wholeness, to heal, and to thrive. And at the core, the energy codes teach us that we are more than our thoughts and our circumstances. We are energy, and we can learn to master this energy for healing and transformation. And the key points in the energy codes practices are breath work and body awareness techniques, like the central channel breath that we just did, and then becoming aware of what it feels like internally within our body, building neural circuitry, energy circuits, so that we can shift from survival to thriving, and then anchoring the true self so that you can live authentically and powerfully. And so these practices guide individuals from a mental understanding of healing to an embodied experience of wholeness and healing from a disease, conditions, aches and pains, to trauma, to mental anguish, to healing unprocessed emotions, to healing our beliefs um, of unworthiness, not good enough, separated from the whole, not belonging, healing in its entirety, leaving no stone unturned, so that you can experience yourself from the truth of who you are. So, in a nutshell, that is what the energy codes are. And so, let's look at Project Awakening. Project Awakening is us having an incarnation here on Earth while in a state of amnesia, and then beginning to move through life experiences that cause us to question, is there more to life than this? So, where in the past we may have judged experiences in our lives as bad or wrong, we flip the perspective from which we are able to view our past experiences to beginning to see how it is that it has all facilitated us arriving in this now moment. Um, Usually, what happens is that something happens that is unwanted, undesired at the level of our consciousness, of our conscious awareness, and we may contract in every sense, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's like slam on the brakes. This is not something I want, and this is bad. So the invitation is to begin to shift the perception of undesired experiences and even letting go of that. What if I began to look at my experiences as having something here for me? What if on the other side of every experience, I access a part of myself I didn't know before? And what begins to happen as you and I begin to live life from that lens, through that perspective, there's less resistance to life. And so evolution can happen with more grace. And we begin to shift from pain to bliss because we know that all of life truly is for us. And we can begin to let go of the fear, the apprehension to life unfolding. So the protective personality is something that has gotten cultivated over the years. When we first arrive here on Earth, there is such a shock to the system, having come from a place of absolute wholeness. Um, and then we arrive here and we feel the weight of the physical density of this dimension. And it's like our mind goes one way, our spirit, our soul goes another, and then the breath. So it's like the mind, body, and the spirit disperse. Everybody heads off in different directions. And so we want to bring them back together. And in the process of gathering ourselves, we become externally oriented. Um, and so a protective personality begins to develop. We're gauging how it is that we need to be in order to keep ourselves safe in this life. As children, we cry, right, so that we will be fed. And that in and of itself begins to cultivate our personality. We're like, oh, I need to cry. I need to make noise to have my needs met. And there might be a belief that gets cultivated in the process that my needs are met through that tall person with long, dark hair that is mom or dad. And so then that begins to cultivate a belief system, a program that runs throughout our lives. We never were told that we have everything within ourselves. But through the pain and suffering that we move through in life, and unfortunately, as we perhaps experience being let down by the people that we thought were supposed to meet our needs, then it gives us no choice than for us to begin to look inward. And this then facilitates our discovery of our bigness. So, heaven has been talked about in certain structures, organizations, religions as a place that we go to after we shed the body, after we release the body, when in reality, even through something as simple as the central channel breath, we get to experience here heaven on earth here now through us. It's not a faraway place. It is something that you and I are bringing by accessing more and more of who we are. Bringing the soulful self here. So there are different stages in this model of awakening. The first, there's the victim consciousness, where we feel like we are at the mercy of the wind, that we have absolutely no say over the circumstances, the experiences, the life events. And we're getting bounced around from wall to wall. And there has to be somebody to blame for all of this discomfort, this pain, and this suffering. So because we are externally oriented, then we say, I'm in pain or I'm suffering because, and it's someone out there. And then eventually we suffer enough to where we like become curious. Is there another way to live this life? Is there a way for me to change the level of discomfort that I am feeling? And so we dive into self-help. Books like Louise Hay, Heal Your Own Life, listening to shows of Wayne Dyer, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. All of that is incredibly helpful. I love those two individuals as teachers and people that are similar to them. But it's not the be all end all. We want to get to the point where we have shifted out of victim consciousness and even shift out of self-help by realizing that you are here to discover your creatorship, to discover that the power is truly within us, to create, that we have an effect and a power over what we create in our outer environment. And this is done through exploring um, the concept of the quantum flip. So before we dive into that, or under the umbrella of the quantum flip, let's look at the front side of the model versus, I mean, the back side of the model versus the front side of the model. And you could think of it as a coin with two sides. So the good news is that there isn't a far distance between one side of the coin and the other. And so it truly is possible for you and I to experience a shift from approaching life from the back side of the model to approaching it from the front side. And it can truly happen in an instant. Whereas before, perhaps the belief has been that it would take a long time to implement a change. And the small print is that there truly is a divine amount of time that perhaps a shift may require. And then there will be moments where you have done so much work that the belief that we were holding in our subconscious has been loosened enough that it can shift in an instant. So some things, and Zoom is agreeing with me that that is possible. Um, so let's say that there are health challenges that are present and you would like to experience more of your wholeness. Um, let's say that your relationship is complicated, um, intense, and you want to experience more harmony. Or maybe you want to experience a relationship, period. Let's say that there are financial difficulties and you want to experience the front side of finances. So this shift in consciousness does not have to be linear. Science has proven that to us through a series of experiments that it really is possible for us as human beings to transform in an instant. And so here's another small fine print. I believe that it is possible for us to experience miracles today, similar to those that perhaps are written about in ancient texts, like the miracles that Yeshua performed, right? Of facilitating the healing of so many. And one example that comes to mind is when he said to the man that was paralyzed from his legs down at the waters of Bethesda. And he said, pick up your bed and walk. And then there was a follow-up question. And he said, what did hinder you? Or what does hinder you? And it is the belief that we are broken, that there is something wrong. So the more that you and I hang out in the space that cultivates a shift in that belief, by maybe even just studying and exploring what we are is actually perfect, whole, and complete, then we can let go of what does hinder us and be able to experience and live from the front side of the model. Let's see. So, how could this be possible? Um, by gaining control of our minds, taking dominion, and by the I that would take control of the mind, I mean my own soul, my own higher self. A lot of life has been living, we have been living much of our lives from the perspective of our minds, addressing everything and trying to figure everything out from here. When in reality, we have three minds within our bodies and one ultimate mind that is accessible. So we have this mind, we have this mind of the heart, and then we have our gut mind, which is the largest brain that we have in our body. And so we want to begin to um, not use this one automatically, but actually drop into our heart for its wisdom and into our bellies for our intuition. Um, Now, science has been showing us that our minds affect our physiology. And there have been some experiments, for example, by the Japanese scientist Miyamoto, where he used water and he used rice within containers to demonstrate this experiment. And one of the containers, he had people speak affirmative, supportive, loving statements to. Another one, he had people speak cruel, harsh, judgmental, criticism comments to. And the last one, he he left alone. No one spoke to it at all. And the results were that with the rice and the water, the one that was spoken to in positive, supportive, loving statements, the water created these beautiful crystalline designs when it was viewed under the lens of a microscope. And the rice remained um, white, fluffy, intact, healthy. The one that was spoken to with harsh criticism and judgment was broken in its fractal design. It had incredibly sharp edges, and there was just no beauty that was apparent. Um, Although I beg to differ. I think that there's beauty in the breakdown. So here's the part that is even more surprising. The the beaker that was left unspoken to is the one that decayed the most. So what does that tell you about us as human beings? Human beings whose minds are running at a very high speed all of the time, whose inner dialogue is often critical and judgmental of self and other. And let's take it a step further. There's an aspect of ourselves that we are just completely ignoring because we are subscribed to the belief that there is something wrong and something broken. So all of our thoughts affect our physiology. And it's been proven in another experiment that DNA has an effect on its environment. So if you and I are thinking good thoughts, loving thoughts that are supportive of ourselves, it supports the physiology, the biology, and this instrument that is a body has an effect on our outer reality. They're not independent of one another. Same if the internal world is one of criticism, attack, war internally, that's going to also have an effect on our outer experiences and realities. So here's another example. For example, when we forgive, we feel it physiologically in our body. There is a weight that gets released, a sense of relaxing that takes place internally. And here's the quantum flip. What if we viewed life from through the lens of not needing to forgive because we're not judging it in the first place? I wrote a book called Life Finds a Way, and it allowed me to begin to look at life up until that point through a different lens. Initially, I just focused on the self-help. I also focused on learning about God and the spiritual principles that run this universe. I focused on prayer. I focused on meditation, all the spiritual practices, just to support myself. And at a certain point, over the years, it shifted how I viewed all of those experiences prior to that moment. Prior to that moment, I felt that they were severe experiences that I had gone through um, randomly. And now, when I look back, even a few years after having written the book, I see all of it as a beautiful orchestrated plan that facilitated my awakening to my true self to whatever degree I have arrived at up until this point. Because our soul, our higher self, being that it is an image and likeness of source, of spirit, is infinite. So there isn't a point in time when you and I arrive. There's always more that is accessible to us if that is our desire to experience and explore what it means to be us at this stage and at the next, and at the next. So shifting from living in the past in victim consciousness to the now moment where we realize that we are here as creators, that we are here as divinity, that we are anchored at divinity, but expressing here in the physical. But that is the tether that we get to follow. If I follow the breadcrumbs or the rope, the lifeline, we will arrive at the place where we're like, ah, that's the truth of us. There truly isn't anything wrong or broken. So we get to use our lives as a laboratory where we're not taking things personal. It is one giant experiment, an experiment in growth and evolution. And then we get to shift to becoming available to living from our dreams as we trust that all of life really is in our favor and that we get to live as the soulful self here on earth. We get to bring heaven on earth as we discover how to live as the soulful self. Imagine what the world would look like if everybody was living from the truth of who they are. It would be a much different landscape. And ultimately, I believe that as we work on ourselves, then that is what we can create, more heaven on earth, by waking up to this truth and living from it and allowing it to be the reality and the truth without the but. But no buts. That simply is the truth. So we'll shift from our external orientation to coming within and creating a deepening in our awareness of this truth. This has an effect on our physiological being, and this then affects all of that outside of ourselves. And often people realize this as they are on their deathbeds. Right? All of a sudden, there is a parting of the veils, and they see the truth of who they really are. And it's like, oh my God, it's like I'm seeing this now as I'm making my exit out of this world. So it usually happens in the last 5 minutes. But there is no reason why we have to wait until we're on our way out. We can have that parting of the veils where we know that we know and live the remainder of our life from that perspective, from that truth, that reality. So survivorship is not a good enough goal for you and me. There is so much more for us to experience. So through these practices, right, of central channel breathing, of clearing out subconscious interference, of healing our past traumas. It's like we cleaned house. And then as we do, we clear the way for more of ourselves to come through this system that is our human body and our energy field here on earth. So that is chapter 1 in a nutshell. Project Awakening, shifting from pain to bliss. So I look forward to seeing you soon and diving into chapter 2.